Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Sew HoneyBea. In today's video, we will be doing yet another tutorial for sophisticated crafts designs. It is for the bell. Yes, it's this one right here. Now there are a lot of details to this pattern and a lot of steps, but don't let that stop you, because what Jassy has done is she has given us a whole array of options. And we take those options and pick and choose which ones we want to make. What that does is it helps us to be the creator of our own vision for this bag. Now, yes, this tutorial is the longest I have made so far, but I wanted to share all of the details with you. In the description below, I have placed a timeline for each section and each option. You will be able to find those options according to the steps in the pattern. For example, if you are wanting to do the crossbody strap, those are steps 6 through 12. So just look at the chapters below in the description and look for steps 6 through 12, and you'll find it there. So whether you want to choose all of the options like I have done in the tutorial, or just a few, the choice is yours. Now, I've also shared a few tips along the way within this tutorial to help you not only in making this bag, but making other bags as well. Please like and subscribe this video. It really helps me out. And while you're there, go ahead and leave a comment if you'd like. Okay, now let's get started. Let's get started first of all with our D-rings, because we have to determine what we're going to make, whether it's a crossbody or a backpack crossbody. If you are doing the crossbody, you are going to cut out one E-piece out of your vinyl or your exterior fabric. But if you are doing the backpack and crossbody, you are going to cut out two of those, okay? Just like I have two right here. And this is piece EA. Then you are going to cut out one of the EB. Now, these are all out of the exterior fabrics. I'm going to be doing the crossbody backpack, so I have two EA pieces and one EB, and they're all out of exterior. I've drawn a line down the center, and I put double stick tape. Now, I want to take that and bring it to the center. Okay, just like that. And I want to do the same thing to these here. Okay, so now I have all my three pieces folded into the center. And now I'm going to top stitch on both sides using a 1/8 inch seam allowance, and I have the stitch length at a 5. And now I want to grab my D-rings. I have a 1-inch D-ring that I want to put on the larger one, which is piece EB. Now these ones are a little bit smaller, but before I put my D-rings on them, I need to cut them into 4. And now add my D-rings to them and clip them. Okay, so now remember, if you're doing the backpack crossbody strap, you should have 4 3/4 inch tabs and 1 1-inch tab. This is going to go on the bottom, these are going to go on each side, and then this is going to go on the top. Okay, so our D-rings are complete, so let's put those aside for right now. So now we're on steps number 6 through 12, and that is using our seatbelt webbing for our crossbody strap or backpack strap. I'm going to burn my ends, and now I'm going to cut my webbing to 66 inches. Now, you may think that that is really long, but I'm quite tall, and I want to be sure that I'm going to have enough length to fit me comfortably. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to go up and down on the center right here. And so now I want to put this through, fold it down on itself, and then go right here. You have a choice. You can either sew this with your machine, or you can add a rivet. I am going to add a rivet. That's why I have it out. Okay, I'm going to move that over. Bring over my mat. Okay, so I'm going to put one down the center, but towards the bottom. Okay, so now I have put my rivet through. So now I want to hold this like this, and I want to burn it just real gently, because I want to make sure that this is not going to fray. Okay, now I'm going to take my rivet out. Whoops, oh, I dropped it. Let me grab another one. And you could even burn it from this side again, but I want to put my rivet now and going this way and do the same thing. Okay, so now put the top portion of your rivet on there. Okay, so there's my rivet done. Okay, so now this is my wrong side. This is my right side. Okay, so I'm going to go right side up and go all the way to the end of my webbing. Number one is to make sure that it doesn't twist on me, but to make sure which side is the right side and which side is the wrong side. I want to grab my swivel clasp and put it in there like that, so that my swivel clasp is on the right side as well. This is the wrong side. I want to go all the way down again. And now I want to make sure again, is it the wrong side? Yes, it is. I want to go up. Then I want to go down the other way. Okay. And then I want to pull this all the way to the end to make sure there's no twists, there's no turns, and everything looks good. So now you should have two pretty sides on both sides. This is a pretty side, and this is a pretty side. Our wrong sides are together. See how they're in the inside? Right there. So now I know I've done that correctly. Okay, so now again, this is my top side, which is the right side. Okay, so I want to put my swivel clasp in here on this side. So now I want to fold this here and do the same thing I did to the other side. Now I want to fold it down, making sure the two edges are right with each other. Okay. And it is complete. Okay, so now we are at the handle, which is steps 13 to 19. I have DE and DE1, which is my webbing and my exterior vinyl. What I did was drew a line down the center, added double stick tape, and then folded my two long ends into the center, just the same way I did for the tabs for the D-rings. So now I'm going to lay these on top of each other, and you will see that the webbing is just a scant larger than the vinyl. So now we're going to top stitch both of these together so that they become one, using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. I am going to clip it so that both edges are going down right down the center. Okay, so now top stitch on both sides using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, so my webbing is now top stitched to my vinyl. So now I want to take the edges and burn them so that they do not fray. Okay, now my handle is complete. I'm going to put this aside. Our next step is our gussets, which is steps 20 through 22. I have them both in fabric and I have backed them with SF101. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold them right sides together. Now I'm going to stitch across here using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Now I'm going to trim the top using my pinking shears, making sure that I do not clip into my stitching line. Now I'm going to turn them right side out. I pressed them with the iron so that that edge would be really crisp. Now I'm going to top stitch both folded sides, not the raw edge side, but the folded side. Top stitch them both using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, so now both ends are top stitched and pressed in place. So these are done. So now let's put them aside and go on to our next step. Okay, so now we are going to do our key leash, which is steps 23 through 29. Now I have cut it out of fabric and then I have backed it with SF101. Okay, so now I wanted to fold the two long sides to each other and press them. And then press each of those sides in on themselves, meeting in the center, and then folding one more time over. Just like that. Okay, now our key leash is pressed. So now I'm going to cut the bulk just out of these edges here so that there's not a raw edge, and then fold it in on itself, just like that. Okay, so that worked out okay. I've got to be really careful about when I turn this corner in top stitching. But I want to start on my raw edge, top stitch or edge stitch across here, go across the top, and then down to the other raw end. Okay? So the only edge that is not top stitched is my open edge or raw edge. Now I want to get my swivel clasp, and this one is a little bit big, but I think I'm okay with that because it's what I have right now. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew across here using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. You can also put a rivet there if you'd like. The next thing is for our slip pockets for the inner portion of our bag. So I have AC and BD here. This is steps 30 through 32. So now what I want to do is I want to take both of these, and they're already kind of folded in the right way because they were cut on the fold. I'm going to just put a couple of pins right here so it does not move on me. And now I'm going to top stitch along the folded edge and then base the other three edges. Okay, this one's done. So now I want to make sure that the direction I'm going to fold it is the right way. So it goes like this. So I want to fold wrong sides together, just the way I did that one, and do exactly the same thing. Okay, those are my 2 inner slip pockets, and they're ready to be set aside. Now I am on steps 33 through 37, and that is for our mesh pocket. Now I decided to do mine out of a clear vinyl. I thought that would be pretty cool to have one out of clear vinyl instead of mesh. And so I cut a strip for the binding across this top using the vinyl. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a center line down my binding piece. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put double stick tape on both edges so that I can stick it down to my clear vinyl. So there's both of those, and I have pulled my paper back on this raw edge here. I hope you can see that. I'm going to remove. So now what I want to do is I want to take this edge and put it right in the center there on that center line. And then stick it down. And so now, because I have put my clear vinyl right on that edge right there down that center line, now when I remove this side of the sticky tape, pull it slower. Okay, so now when I fold this over, it's going to be right at that fold. In theory, obviously. Okay, so what I thought was the center wasn't the center, obviously. So I'm going to cut down my clear plastic and make this work. Okay, so now when I fold it down, I want to make sure that the both edges meet each other so that you can't see them on either side. Okay, so I'm meeting up both edges and then taping it down all the way down to the end. Okay, so you see how that is? And you can't see either edge. So now I want to top stitch across here using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Now grab my scissors and trim down the edges to size. I'm going to also top stitch it across the top so that as I use this pocket, this edge here will not become warped. It won't stretch, I guess is what I'm saying. So I'm going to go ahead and do a top stitch across the top using a 1/8 inch seam allowance as well. Yep, I like that a lot better. Okay, so now I'm going to put my paper back. Let's put that aside. Okay, so now we are going to do the slip pocket for our back panel. This is going to be steps 38 through 45. Now you will notice that there is a marking here for your magnetic snap, and you want to make sure that you transfer that over to the wrong side of your lining. See how we have it right there? Okay, so now I'm going to match up my centers, pin it across the top, and now I have right sides together, okay? And you should see your marking right there where you have for your magnetic snap. So now I'm going to sew across the top, and I know this is the top portion because that's where my snap goes. So I'm going to sew across the top using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And now I want to trim up my edges to reduce the bulk. Now do not forget to do this, especially if you are using a domestic machine, because you want to try and reduce that bulk as much as possible in those corners. Okay, so now I want to put these wrong sides together right at that edge, and then I want to stitch across using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, so now it's completely top stitched, and now I want to turn this around, open this up. I've got my magnetic snaps right here, and now I want to grab one of my washers and put it right at the center there of where I marked for my magnetic snap. Then I want to grab and mark my two edges, get my seam ripper, and just open up those two edges just as far as I want them to go. I don't want to make them too big. Even though this is a water resistant canvas, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use some free check for extra security on this. Just a couple little drops there. Do the same thing for my stabilizer because I want to make sure that it's something to back it, to hold it onto. Because if I wasn't to put stabilizer on there, what could happen is I would wind up tearing out this magnet. So the stabilizer's there to give it support. Now I'm putting the male portion on this edge here. And now I'm going to put my stabilizer, and I'm going to grab my scissors and cut off that little top edge there. Then I'm going to grab my washer, put that on. To make sure it really gets on there. Okay, so that piece is on there, the magnetic snap. Okay. So now I've got one more washer and one more piece, the other side of that snap. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it right here on the magnet on my machine so that I do not lose it. So now this is complete, and we'll set this aside. Okay, the next thing we are going to be doing is our card slot panel and the card slots. This is going to be steps number 46 through 70. What I really like about this card slot panel is that she tells you exactly where to mark or where to snip in your pattern onto your fabric. So that way you're not measuring anything, you're not trying to guess at anything. So here you can see our line here is a broken line, and I've snipped on my fabric. We're going to fold wrong sides together and line up to one. So we're going to fold this wrong sides together like this, and then we're going to line it up to number one. Okay, so now let me get that over here. That's my number one fold. So right here is my next fold. So I want to fold it wrong sides together. Here's my snip on the other side, and I'm going to put a pin in it. Okay, and now I want to find my top fold or my top snip, which is right there. Okay, so I want to bring this fold up to there, making sure my edges are right with each other. Okay, same thing on this side. Here's my snip. So I want to bring this fold right up to that snip, and then put a clip. And just kind of finger press that going down. Now our next step is to go down to where it says fold wrong sides together and line up to number two. So we're going to fold these wrong sides together and then line them up to number two, which is the red line. So now I'm going to go down, find my next snip, which is right there. Wrong sides together, put a pin, find my wrong sides together clip on this side, and put a pin as well. So now I want to find my next snip, which is right here, and I want to grab this one and bring it up to there. And do the same thing on this side. Here's my snip right there, and I want to bring that fold up to that snip. Okay, and so we kind of get the idea of the whole thing. So now let's go on to the next one. So you can see I have 3 folds there. Press this with an iron to make sure none of those folds move on me. I want to move this as little as possible because I want those pressed folds, I want them to get into the memory, not only of the fabric, but also of the interfacing. Now, she gives you a measurement as to how tall this piece should be. So go ahead and get that measurement, and if you need to cut it down a little bit, you can, or you can adjust it. But it should come out just right. But you'll see too, what I always do when I'm doing card slots, see here's the cutting edge of the card slot itself. I always leave just a fraction of an inch at the top so that if there's a discrepancy in my folds or anything like that, I can just have that little extra. And then once I've folded everything, I will go ahead and I'll measure this portion, which is the bottom and the top, and then I'll cut it down to the measured size that I want. And plus too, what that does is it makes this completely square, well not square, but a rectangle. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and measure that and cut it down. Okay, so I used my small rotary cutter, and I've cut it down to size that I want it. And it worked out really well. Now I can take a contact card and put it in here, and it fits just perfectly. So there's our card slots all folded and pressed and everything. Okay, now we're on step 52, and that is top stitching each of these folds using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to get some tape, any tape, but just make sure that it is not going to leave a residue on your fabric. Okay, so I guess I shouldn't say any tape, but I use Scotch tape. Buddy flip on that. Okay, now I want to find the center of this so that I can sew down the center to separate each of these 3 card slots to make them 6 card slots. So I'm wanting to find the center on the top and on the bottom. Now I'm on step 55, and I want to separate these 3 card slots into 6. So what I've done is I've found my centers, I've drawn a line down the center, and then right here I've put a little notch or a little marking at the top of each of my card slots. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew about 1/16 of an inch on each side. So I'm going to start here, go all the way down, and when I come to each of these markings here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 1 stitch back, 1 stitch forward, 1 stitch back. So what that's doing is it's going to reinforce each of these card slots. Okay. So now our card slots are separated into 6. Okay, so now we're on step 56. I have piece BE1, which is my card slot panel lining, and I want to put them right sides together. So I have like this, put them right sides together, put a couple of clips at the top. Now make sure that you're going to sew the top. Make sure your card slots are going this way. This is your bottom, this is your top. Now I want to sew across the top using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so now I'm going to clip my edges to reduce the bulk here in this corners. Don't forget to do this, especially if you are using a domestic machine. Okay, so I've clipped my corners right there, making sure not to snip my thread. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to turn this so that I have the edge right on there, right there. And actually I'm going to pin this. And I can remove this Scotch tape now because it's not going to move on me. Okay, so now I want to top stitch across the top, and that is on my folded edge. And then I want to baste all the other 3 sides. Do not run over your pins. Okay, so now our card slot panel is complete. Okay, now we're on number 61. I have my card slot panel here. I have my logo tag. It says, "You look really pretty today." I like these. I get them over at moremino.com. I will put the link in the description below. Okay, so now I have my credit card slots, my logo tag, and then I have my 2 side panels. First of all, I want to put my tag on this side. I'm going to put it about right there. Now I want to take my side panel, which I've already put SF101 on, and I want to line up the bottom edge and this edge here, and then put a clip. Now you should have an overhang here, okay, because when we pull this back, we're going to fold that down. So that's correct if you have it like that. I'm going to start up here, and I'm going to sew down using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to stop here. I'm not going to sew into this extra portion here, okay? Okay, so now I am going to get my iron because I really want to press this open here. Okay, so now I've pressed that all down, and I've made sure that my label has enough at the top so that you can see what that says. Okay, so now I want to match up my center points right here. Okay, now I want to take my overhang and fold it down so that it is even with the top edge. So I want all this edge here to be even with itself so that it is a straight line. And I want to add a clip right there. Okay, do the same thing to the side. Fold it down on itself. Okay, so now my line is straight across the top. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim just some of this away, not a whole lot, because we'll trim it again afterwards, but I just want to make sure that when I baste this across that I'm going to be catching it. Okay, so now I'm going to start here at this edge and baste 1/8 of an inch across, go across the top, tacking this down, and then come down, go across the bottom, and then go up, and then come back down, okay? Okay, so now our panel is complete. Our top edges are basted down, and our slip pocket is all ready, and we have our card slots with our tag. So now I want to get this and really cut it down to the correct size of my lining piece. Okay, so now we are going to put this panel aside and go on to our next slip pocket panel. Now we are on our next slip pocket, which is steps number 71 through 73. Now I found my center markings. I have stabilized this a little bit more with a thicker stabilizer, And then this here is one of the slip pockets that we used from earlier. I think I like this side better. I have found my center points, both the top and bottom in my lining and on the bottom portion of my slip pocket, because you don't want to snip up here, okay? So now I want to get my lining and I want to put both of those centers together. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to baste my perimeter, and remember, we're going to have to cut down these edges too, because our slip pocket is a rectangle, but our lining is a oval. So now I'm going to baste around here, and then I will cut it down. Now I want to take my scissors, and I want to cut off the little corners here, so they are all same size. Okay, now you can choose for yourself if you want to divide this slip pocket here. And because there are so many slip pockets in this little bag, what I want to do is, I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I want to find my bottom, okay, my little snip from the bottom and the snip at the top, and I want to fold that so that I can put a little crease in there so I know where to divide that pocket. Okay, so now I want to go ahead and start from the bottom and do the same thing the way we divided the card slots. I want to go up, take one stitch over, and then go down. Okay, so now we have 2 slip pockets here for smaller items, so that works out good. Okay, so now this panel is complete. Okay, so now I have the pieces for my front zipper pocket assembly. I have BB and BB1, BC and B1, and they both have their stabilizer already on them. And since it's the bottom portion, I'm using Decavale Heavy because I want to really pack out this bag. Okay, and then I have the Z3 zipper with the zipper pull. And my zipper pull says "As You Wish," and it is Wesley and Buttercup from The Princess Bride. So now I got to get my lighter. It keeps going out. Come on. I have the fan on because it is 107 today, and it is just blazing hot. So I cannot turn off my fan, but it's blowing out the lighter. So anyways, I burned my edges, and this is zipper Z3, and it will show you on page 9 the size or the length of this zipper. So now we're working on step 74 all the way to 102. And it seems like a lot of steps, but it's not. It's a lot of steps, but they're small steps. Okay, so now here's my zipper. My zipper pull is going from right to left. Now I have BC, and which is my exterior vinyl piece. I want to line it up with this here. Clip all the way across. Okay. So now I want to baste along this long edge here using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, so now I want to take the other section. I want to pin it across the top just the same way as I did my vinyl. Let me explain this better. Okay, so now I'm putting my lining now to the back side of the zipper. Okay, so I've clipped it right there all the way down. Okay, so now I'm going to sew across here using a 1/4 inch seam allowance so that the zipper and the lining are all on there together. So using a 1/4 inch seam allowance now. On the wrong side of your zipper, you should see right side of your lining. on the right side of your zipper, you should see the right side of your vinyl. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip both of these edges because we're going to top stitch across here and baste across the bottom. But it's a little tough because of using that heavy stabilizer, but it can be done. Okay, now I want to top stitch all this here and then baste the other 3 sides. So I'm going to start off with the top stitching so that I can make sure that both of my edges are right with each other. So now I'm going to baste the other 3 edges, and actually I'm going to sew across this zipper so make sure my pull doesn't come off. Now I want to take my base fabric, which is my other exterior, it's BB, and I want to put it right sides together, and I want to match up this end here. And do the same thing to this side over here. And let's move our zipper out of the way. So now I want to sew across these 2 short edges using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, so now I've trimmed up my edges to reduce the bulk on those seams that we've just sewn. So now you should have a circle loop. Oh, wait a second. I think I skipped a step. Oh, yeah, I did. So this piece has to go on this side. Now, make sure your 2 lining pieces are right sides together, just like our 2 vinyl pieces were right sides together. Now I want to sew across using the same 3/8 inch seam allowance. Right across there, just like that. Okay, so now you should have a circle loop. Okay, and I want to kind of squish this up a little bit on this side. Put a clip right there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to top stitch across here, closing off this seam, and then baste along both of these edges so that this becomes 1 piece instead of 3. So it'll all be 1 piece together. Well, I threw some of the clips on the ground. Okay. And I kind of pull on it like this to make sure that they're lined up with each other. I'm going to do each of these edges individually. So I'm going to baste across here first and then stop. Then I will baste across here going in the same direction so that there's no waviness. Especially with this vinyl, it could get wavy and I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to go in the same direction on this side and stop. Then I'm going to top stitch across the short ends at the same time. Okay? So here we go. Okay, so now I'm going to top stitch across the top. And It's times like this that a hemp jumper really works well. You'll see there's a thick side and then a thin side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a thicker side, and I'm going to put it right between my presser foot right there. And it's not going to run over it or anything like that. So now when I go forward, it's thinking my presser foot is down all the way. So now I'm going to go forward, and you can go really slow. And now put it in the front if you feel that you need to. And just go real slow because you do not want to run this over. Okay. Okay. And let me show you how well that works. And so see, there's no, oh, you can't see, it doesn't want to focus in. But you can see maybe from this side, there's no skip stitches or anything. Okay. So now let's do the same thing to this side over here. Hold my threads. Okay. And especially if you're using a domestic machine, because if you go over different layers of fabric and you notice that you're skipping a stitch or something like that, that's more than likely what is going on. Because when your presser foot comes up too high, what it's doing is it's loosening the tensions, the tension discs. Okay, see, when my presser foot is down, my tension discs don't move. But as I pick them up, see how they move? So what's happening is when you're going over different layers of material, your machine or your presser foot thinks that you're lifting up on your presser foot. So your tension gets loose, and with that tension, it doesn't catch the bobbin thread, and so you'll get a skip stitch. Okay. So now our band is complete. Now we're going to be doing steps 86 to 102. So I need my card slot panel, my slip pocket panel, my exterior panel, and then my gusset. So now I've marked my center points on my exterior, but I want to do that same thing on my gusset. Okay, so now I'm going to put these two edges together. And then burn a little snip in there. And since this is pretty much plastic, I can do it on that side as well. So you can see that it burns just a little snip. And since it's burned, it's not going to fray no matter what. Okay, so now let's do the same thing to this side. And again, since it's plastic. Now I'm at step 87. So what I want to do is I want to open up my zipper all the way. Okay. And now I have my exterior right side up. You can see how our zipper is going from right to left. Our zipper is towards us and our vinyl is towards the other side. Now what I want to do is I want to flip this inside out so that now our lining is towards us and our zipper is wrong side up, but it's facing away from us. Right here is our center point. Okay, so you see how it's marked right there? I want to get that together with the center point of the exterior. I want to make sure that right sides are together. You should be, when you flip this up, you should see the right side of your vinyl and the right side of your vinyl. Okay? And then clip all the way around. Now in the picture she has the zipper open. So let's do it that way. And then this portion, she has it clipped. So now I am going to continue with the zipper. Now, I also clipped my quarter point right here in my exterior. You see that? And look how that quarter point meets up right there with this point here that we top stitched. So I know I'm right where I should be. So here is my center point where I burned it, and right here is the snip for my exterior. Okay, so they lined up just right as well. Getting a little excess here in the corner. I'll have to snip that in a little bit. Now I have a little excess material here. See how it's scrunching up? So what I want to do is I want to put small snips, not deep. I only a tiny bit more than 1/8 of an inch, because my seam allowance is going to be 1/4 of an inch. So I do not want to go 1/4 of an inch, because then it would leave holes. But now what's going to happen is that's going to be able to open up. Okay, so now I'm going to base this whole thing using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. And I'm actually going to start at the bottom. Now I want to make sure that none of my pieces move. Okay, so I've really got to manipulate the fabric, get out the hemostat if you need to, but really make sure that nothing moves. And just go really slow. And be aware where your zipper pull is. My zipper pull's over here, especially if your zipper pull is long, because you want to make sure you know where it is at all times so that you do not run it over. Okay, so now let's see how that came out. Had a few hiccups with the bobbin running out. Unclip that. Let's turn it around. And now this is just basted, but I want to make sure that there was no tucks. So if you have a tuck here, you're going to have a tuck again when you sew it again. So now my pocket is right side up, and my slip pocket is going to be right side down, okay, because I want to put both of these right sides together. You know, you might think that you put it on to this side, but you do not. What you're doing is you're putting it onto the same side we just finished sewing. Okay, let me open this up again so that this can be in the middle and out of our way. So now go all the way around. So you don't get any tucks in this corner especially. Now, in this corner right here, it's wanting to fold up, but I don't want it to do that. So let me open this up a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about. On this corner, I want to lay it out and really just like as if when I was sewing it, and really just push it down like that, okay? So that as I sew across here at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, I'm not going to get any tucks in there, okay? So I want to really manipulate and fold this fabric like that so that there is no harsh tucks there. And then take this and then clip it. And now I'm going to be going slow around these corners also, because I want to be able to feel my way as I'm sewing here. And I want to do the same thing to this side. First of all, let me do across the top. Same thing over here. Fold this fabric down, really kind of smash it in there. See how I'm kind of smashing it down so that along this edge it's no tucks, okay? And then I'm going to grab this side and then pin it or clip it. Okay, so now I am going to sew around here using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You will notice that I have a marking here and a marking here. I'm leaving a section open so that we can turn this right side out. Okay, so I'm going to start here at a 1/4 inch, go all the way around and stop right there. Make sure you do not sew across the bottom, and make sure it's at the bottom and not the top. Okay, so you want this at the bottom. Okay. Now when you get to these edges right here, you've got to feel for your zipper because your zipper is wanting to fold up on you and you do not want to mess up your zipper right there. So kind of manipulate it as you go around that corner. Sewed all the way across. I caught everything. So now let's turn it right side out. So now you will notice that it's still open here, okay, because that's where we turned it. So now what I want to do is I'm going to put my dog sock. Okay, so I want to put a small piece of double stick tape, not all the way across, but just a small little piece right there. Okay. I want to fold this piece down and fold it right where it belongs with right sides together, because remember we had our right sides marked. So now my edge is really good. Okay, so now I'm ready to do my front panel, which is the inner lining. It's a zipper pocket method number 1, and this is the one with the zipper overlay. So these steps will be steps 103 to 123. So now I have my zipper, which is a Z2. You'll find the length of that with the zipper pull. Then I have piece AB, which is my zipper pocket lining. Now we've done this style zipper quite a few times in the tutorials, and now it's the same way. I want my zipper to close from right to left, but we're doing this pocket upside down first of all, so we have to flip it around. So now my zipper is closing left to right. Clip across the top. Okay, so these both pieces are right side up. My canvas or my lining fabric is right side up. My zipper is right side up. The zipper is closing from left to right. Okay, so now I've sewn a basting stitch across the top at a 1/8 inch seam allowance. So now I want to lift up my zipper on this side, lift up this bottom, and pin it to this side over here. And do the same thing, baste across the top using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. So now there's our zipper lining, and we open it up. The right side is in the inside, okay? So now let me close that up. So now I want to get this one here, and okay, so now I have piece A1, and I have put a piece of stable interfacing on the back of here, and I have drawn where my zipper box is. So now what I want to do is I want to open up this zipper box right at that line, and now I'm going to completely cut out this zipper box. Okay, so that is completely cut out. I have this piece here, and you can see here she also has a piece that you have to cut out of the center. Now I want to do the same thing and cut this out. So there's my piece cut out. Okay, so now I'm going to get my double stick tape, and I'm going to add it across here. Okay, so now let me pull that down. So now what I want to do is I want to place this right here. Something tells me this should be a little bit bigger because are they the same size? Let me just cut it just maybe a 1/16. So now, because I cut it just slightly larger, you see how on this side you cannot see any of the blue area, okay? Now you can put another tag right here, and it says made in quarantine. So now what I want to do is I want to top stitch around here using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. And so I am also not going to back stitch, okay? So I'm going to drop my needle, hold on to my threads because I don't want them sucked up in there. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to pull my threads to the back and then tie them. So now what I want to do is I want to get this, our pocket is closing from right to left, so we can see it's going this way. I want to sew the bottom of this portion first. So now right there is where I want to sew my pocket. Now again, make sure, because we're sewing the bottom portion, that there's nothing over here, just our zipper, and all of our pocket and everything is over here on this side. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop my needle right here. I am not going to back stitch And I'm going to sew across the bottom portion, moving my zipper out of the way when I get to it, and then stop over here. So I want to lift my presser foot all the way up, drop my needle right where I want it, and then sew across. Okay, so now I am on step 113. I want to move the pocket back in place and kind of like finger press it down here so that it bends where I want it to. So now I have to finish off this pocket sewing up the top portion. Now the only thing that is on this side over here is our outside panel and this side of our zipper. The whole pocket and everything is on that side. So now I want to go up here, sew across the top, sew down across here. Do not backstitch. So I want to drop my needle right where this stitching on the bottom ended, so that it looks like it's one continuous stitch. Don't backstitch. Maybe half a stitch. Right there. Okay. Okay, there's our zipper overlay. Now I am on step 118. So now what I want to do is I want to move my front panel out of the way, and I want to close up this pocket using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, and there's our pocket. It's nice and clean. There's our zipper panel. You know, I really like this. I think I'm going to do this from now on. We have AC and A1, which is our slip pocket and the panel we've just completed. I want to show you something that happened. This here is a water resistant canvas, and when I went to iron this, it shrunk. So let me show you how much it shrunk across the top. It is more than ½ inch. My final assembly for this panel is 1/4 inch. So I am not going to catch this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take double stick tape, top stitch it to finish off that seam, and what it'll do too is it'll keep it out of my seam for the final assembly. First of all, let me line up the bottom. Now what you would do is, because yours isn't going to have melted or shrunk up, so you'll just go ahead and baste around these 3 edges and you're done. You can also choose if you want to divide these into 2 pockets. What I am going to do is I'm going to put a couple of pin pockets for myself. So I am folding this over just about 1/4 inch. Now I'm going to do the same thing over here. There is our slip pocket, and it is folded over. Okay, you can see how I have folded it over. So now I am going to top stitch across here, down here, and then up here, making sure that I'm not going to catch my pocket on the bottom. And also what this is going to do, it is going to keep that huge bulk out of that seam for the final assembly. So there's my slip pocket. So now here's where you have a choice. You can divide this slip pocket into two or just leave it like that. If you do divide this into two, you've got to remember to pull your pocket out of the way, okay? Because you don't want to put a seam down your pocket or else you won't be able to use your pocket. What I am going to do is, you can see here I have measured 1 inch from this edge here. And that is so that I can put an ink pen in here, okay? So I'm going to sew it just a little bit bigger than that. So here's my ink pen. Do I want another one? That way I could use my stylus and an ink pen. You know what? I'm going to put another one. Okay. So there's 2 dividers there for my ink pens, and this is still big enough that I can put my cell phone or whatever I want in there. So there's that completed panel. I really, really like that zipper pocket. So now we're on number 124, which is our front panel for the exterior. And this is zipper method number 2 with our zipper box. You are going to need piece AB, which is the remaining one, because remember, we cut 2 of them. We used one for this zipper pocket, so now we're using the other one for our exterior zipper pocket. Now, in 124, she actually has you getting started with this first. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut down the center of this pocket. Now I want to get the double stick tape. So now I want to remove that double stick tape and fold those edges back on themselves. Okay, so you can see that I've transferred that over, and now I'm going to cut it out. There is our panel. I'm going to put that aside. Okay, so now we are going to apply the zipper pocket to this panel the same way we did the other one. Okay, so now we are going to have our zipper going the upside down way. So here my zipper is going left to right. Now I'm going to clip this across, right side up. I'm going to baste across the top using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, so now I'm going to flip this up and flip this up. Do the same thing. Clip 1/8 inch seam allowance, basting across the top. Okay, so now my zipper now is closing from right to left, so I want this zipper in here like this. I'm going to sew the bottom portion first, so I flip it out of the way, put this on top of here. Let's see, move my zipper pull out of the way, make sure it's as center as possible. Okay, and so now I'm going to sew the bottom just like I did the other one. And when I come to this, I'm going to drop my needle, go across, do not backstitch. Okay, so now our bottom portion is sewn on. So now I want to put my pocket back where it's supposed to be. And I want to put my hands inside of here, kind of finger press this lining where it is supposed to be. So now I can put my pocket in place. So now I'm going to sew across here, across the top, and then down there. Do not back stitch, pull them to the back, tie them off. Same exact thing over again. Okay. Okay, there's my top zipper pocket. Okay, and so now what I want to do is I want to close out my zipper just the same exact way we did the last one, 3/8 of an inch. Okay, so now my main panel with my zipper pocket is done. So I can put this aside for now. So now we're ready to put these two things together. So now we're on step 135 and we will be going through to step 145. Okay, so now I want to flip this over, move my pocket out of the way, and I want to snip these corners right here, not going more than a 1/8 inch in there. So now I want to take this here and pin it to this here, so that on this side what it will look like is we are attaching these two pieces together. Barely put such a small snip right there. So now I want to put right sides together. So I have this piece right side up. Now I want to put this piece on there like this. So I'm going to flip this up in the air like this, and these two pieces have to go together. Okay, so I'm going to grab it like this, and so I have my center mark there and I have my center mark here. I want to match up. Let me grab a handful of clips. I want to first of all match up that point there. Now this is going to go around here. Okay, so now I can turn it around and I can start clipping it. Okay, so now I figured it out. What happened was my fault, not the pattern, because when I put this interfacing in here, it didn't allow this to stretch. So you see how it stopped right there? This is actually supposed to go all the way down to here, because it's supposed to stretch all this around this corner, and this excess here should be down here. Now look at what happened when I took it all apart, okay, removed the interfacing up to here. All of a sudden this stretched so that this edge came all the way down to here. So now when I put this back, see how the wrinkle went away? And this still has it over here. So now I know what I did wrong, and it was me, not the pattern. So now again I want to match up my center pieces just right there. Now you'll notice that this really stretches down so that it can actually go all the way to the bottom, just like this did. using 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Much better. And now this came all the way down to the bottom, whereas before it was like an inch up here. So now, yeah, much better. Here I thought putting a interfacing on this piece here, on piece A, would make sure that this did not stretch out of place, this piece. But apparently it was supposed to stretch in order to make it around this corner and everything. So mission accomplished. And now let's top stitch this again using a 1/8 inch seam allowance, and I want to make sure that my seam allowance is on this side, so I'm top stitching through it. And just go real slow. Now make sure your pocket is out of the way. Okay. Go up. I want to drop my needle right where I was. There. Okay. Okay, so that is much better. Once we put our foam or stabilizer in here, it'll take a lot more of these wrinkles out, because I think since I had to take it apart and then top stitch it again and the whole thing, I think that it went out of shape a little bit, but it's okay. Now right here is where she has you put your logo tag if you have one. I do not have one, but if you do, you know how to put one on. Okay, so now this is done, and so now I'm going to put this aside. The next step will be our base, which will be our purse feet. Now I have my base piece, and it has Decaville Heavy on it, and I very lightly pressed this to there. Once I put my purse feet on, the Decaville will stay in place. So now here's my purse feet, and I want to take each of these and cut a hole down the center. Okay, just like that. I've put the screws through there. Now I will get each one of the feet and screw it on. I really like using these feet because they are so easy and quick. Okay, so now I hold it on this side and then just take a few more turns to really make sure that's on there well. Okay, all it takes is a few minutes. I already have some purse feet on there. And because it's going through the Decaville Heavy, that is really stable. And also, those purse feet are also going to keep my Decaville in place. So now these are steps 157 to 177. Now if you are not going to use this as a backpack, go ahead and jump to step number 173. But I am going to be doing it as a backpack, so I'm going to be showing you each step. Okay, so now we are going to start off with piece DA, which is our back panel. Okay, and now I have already transferred this marking here to right here. Okay, and that's where our D-ring is going to go. So you're getting the bigger of the two. See how you can definitely see this is the bigger one. This one goes on the top. Okay, so now I'm going to put a piece of interfacing on the back of here, and then just lightly, because I want to be real careful. I don't want to really press on this too hard because I don't want the texture of my vinyl to go away. So that's good enough there. Let me go over it one more time. So now I want to cut this piece right here open, right where, okay. Now be really careful about the way you transfer your markings. Make sure that they are really accurate, because you do not want to overcut anything. Okay, so now there's my cutting for my D-ring. Okay, so here's my D-ring. Here's my slit, and it has been reinforced in the back with a piece of interfacing. So I want to take off my D-ring. I have my piece here, and the curve is at the top. Now it is right side up. I want this wrong side up. Okay, so you can see that that's the wrong side. It's not all the way quite to the bottom. Here's my curved edge, okay, just like that. Now I want to flip it around, and I want to sew across here. So now I want to get my D-ring, put my D-ring in here, making sure it's on the right side. Put it all the way down. And now I want to get my remaining side and put it through here. Okay. Now this is where the picture looks like on step 169. Okay. So now it looks like, you see here is our remaining flap, and it's not sewn to anything. So I've opened out both of these edges. I want to sew across here, making this top portion stable with this, because this will go up like this once we sew this edge as well. I'm going to separate these or open them out, and now I'm going to sew across here, making sure again that I'm not going out beyond my edge. Okay, just like that. Okay, so now I sew across here at the bottom of this portion. And now here, I do not want to back stitch. I'm going to pull my threads to the back and then tie them off. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a rivet right here down the want to put this through the back. Okay, there is the backpack strap, the D-ring for my backpack strap. Okay, so now I have my strap, and I've marked my markings on the wrong side, which is my webbing side. And now I've got to put them on the placement right here. So you can see that I've marked and I've clipped also where I want that to be. Now I'm putting double stick tape on here so that it'll stick right where I want it to, and then I can stitch it down. Okay, so now put that on there, and I want to burn the edge of my webbing, take off my double stick tape, and I have markings here as to where my webbing is going to go. So I really, okay, and again put it in the same spot where it's supposed to go. So now I've marked where my stitching needs to end on both edges. Okay, so now I want to go on here, go across here up to my stitching where it needs to end, go across, and then go down. Drop my needle right there. Okay, and there's my handle, and it's on there. So now I want to get out my rivets one more time, and I want to put rivets on both of these sides. Okay, but I think I'm going to use a little bit bigger rivet. Let me see if I have some bigger ones. Okay, I do have larger rivets, so I want to put 2 on each side. And 1 inch. So now there's one right there. And there's one right there. I like the way that's come out. Looks the way our picture is supposed to look, except I put 2 instead of 1 on each side. And I'm glad I put 2 because this is, I'm planning on really carrying out quite a bit with this. So I want to make sure that this is really, really sturdy. All of my pieces are. Okay, so now this portion is complete. Okay, let me set that aside. Okay, so this is zipper method number 3, which is our zipper box. You're going to need your exterior and your lining. And now this is steps number 178 to 199. Okay, first of all, I want to burn my zipper ends. Good habits to have. Okay, so now I have my zipper closing from right to left. And I'm going to baste it across the top. So that's basted on there. I'm going to set that aside for right now. I have marked my zipper box. This here is 1/4 of an inch away from this edge, okay, from this distance. Here to here is 3/8 of an inch on both sides. So I've marked my center there, and I've marked my center here. So now I want to put my exterior right side up and the top up here. Now I want to get my pocket lining with my zipper, and I want to put it right side down. So these two are right sides together. Both the lining, the zipper are right sides, and this is right side. I'm going to drop my needle right at that intersection right there, go forward, back stitch, go all the way down to this intersection here, and then back stitch. So to make sure that I'm dropping my needle right where I want it, I'm lifting my presser foot all the way and turning my wheel to drop that needle right where I want it. I started right in that intersection and ended right in the intersection. Now I want to grab my very sharp scissors and I want to cut into here. So you can see it cut through everything there. Now I want to finger press this in place so that my lining is on one side and my vinyl is on the other. So now what I want to do is I want to close off my edges. So I'm going to pull this back on itself to expose this edge. Remember, this is the edge that we marked at 3/8 of an inch. That's why we wanted to stop right at that corner where they intersected. Okay, so I want to make sure that this is straight on here. Now I want to sew across here, right across that marking there. Okay, and you can see how nice and neat that corner is now. So now do the same thing to this side. Okay, so number 193 has us top stitching this all the way around. Okay, this whole box area here, using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Now I want to grab my pocket and bring it up so that it meets on the top, okay? But I'm going to line it up coming from this side because I want to make sure that my sides are straight. So right about there. Pin it across the top and then baste it at a 1/8 inch seam allowance. I want to remember to tell you this. You're only going to be basting the zipper to the lining. Don't go all the way to the edge because we're going to have to pull this back in order to close up this pocket. Okay, and there's our zipper pocket. So when we open it up, it's like that, and it's all enclosed. And as many times as I have made this pocket, I am now realizing I made the zipper to close going the wrong way, but that's okay. This is my bag. It'll remind me always to double check, make sure I'm going the right way. Okay, so now I'm on step 200. I've got to get the top handle back and this here. I want to put these right sides together, clip them across the top, and then sew them using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So now I want to grab my very sharp pair of scissors and cut down the bulk in those two corners, making sure that I do not clip the stitching. So now I want to top stitch this on the flap side, or the top side, I guess I should say. So I want to make sure that my seam allowance is going this way because that's what I'm top stitching it on. So now I have my slip pocket. Remember, this is a slip pocket that we put the magnetic snap. So I want to mark both of my centers. So now I want to mark, first of all, where I want my snap to go. Now we're on our back panel lining. This is piece D1 and DD, which would be, if you're doing it just like the pattern, it'll be a slip pocket. But remember, I'm using a clear vinyl to make it a clear pocket. So now I want to go along the bottom and I want to clip it all way across. Now I want to base these three sides using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Now I want to cut down my sides because with the mesh pocket, the piece is a little bit big. Now here's where you will determine for yourself if you want to put a divider in this slip pocket. Now I want to put a digital device in this pocket, and that's why I wanted it to be a clear vinyl pocket. So I am not going to put a divider. But if you do want to put a divider, you are going to fold this in half, mark along here where you want the divider to go, and then you will sew up, click one over or stitch one over, and then go down. Okay, and then you will have a divided pocket. But I'm just going to leave this as one main pocket. Okay, so now this is ready until we need it, so we'll set this aside. So now I'm doing the side panel for the exterior. I have the two vinyl exteriors with the Decaville Heavy or Peltex, whatever stabilizer you're putting on the back. I have also marked where my hidden connector is going, and I have cut that open. Okay, so now let me show you what I did with this one here. Okay, so I went ahead and I put right sides together of my tab. Okay, so this is the right side of my vinyl, this is the right side. Put it right sides together, put it through the hole that I had cut. Now the tab, I moved it all the way up to the edge of my stabilizer. I sewed right here, back and forth, making sure that I did not go beyond either side, okay, because I only want my stitching in here in this tab. Now I'm going to get the D-ring, put my D-ring on here so that the flat portion of the D-ring is on this side, because we are going to get the D-ring now and put it back through this hole here. Okay, so now I'm going to put it like that, making sure that my triangles here on the side are pushed towards the back, okay, so that there are no raw edges here in the front. Okay, just like that. I want to make sure the distance on the outside of my D-rings are the same, and they are, so that I'm good to go right there. Okay, so now I am going to pull this, only this portion. Okay, so now I am moving my D-ring out of the way to make sure that I do not run it over, and I'm only going to go through this portion here, okay, and this flap. Okay, making sure that I'm not going to run over my D-ring. So kind of put a little crease in it like that, so that I know that's where I want to sew it. Remember, don't extend outside your flap. So now when I move this back, see how it's caught in there and it's a finished edge. This here is a finished edge, And now I want to move my triangles back to the back. Okay, so now I want to sew across here going through all thicknesses. And I want to burn my threads. I want to burn my threads over here too. I like the way those came out. Okay, and there's our two connectors, and they came out really good. I'm really glad. Okay, so now, and this duct tape will hold down those two triangles on the side. Okay, so these are complete, and I'm going to put these aside for right now and grab the two lining pieces and the two exteriors. And this is for the side pockets. And now what I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to put them right sides together. And I've already marked where my magnet is going to go. I'm going to sew across the top using a 1/4 inch seam allowance or a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, now I want to turn them to the right side. Fold along this crease, clip it, and then top stitch it. Okay, now I'm going to top stitch it using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, now I have decided that I am going to put in the snaps on the side pockets. Man, these magnets are pretty strong. Okay, so there you go. One goes on that side, that one goes on this side. 2 and 2. Okay, I have everything. And the outside of this one. So I need these ones back. Okay, making sure I'm putting it in the right spot. Now we're going to do this the same way we did the other magnetic snap. Put your washer right on that center mark. Mark your legs of your washer. And then cut for your legs. Okay. Get the fray check. Put it on there. Just a dab. Here's my female snap. I'm going to put the female portion on here. Get a piece of Decaville. Okay, so there's my snap. So now I'm going to do the same thing to this side. Okay, so now those snaps are on. Okay, now I've put the washer on the remaining snaps, and I'm going to put them up on my magnet as well. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to base this all the way around, so that this becomes one piece. So now there's my side panels, and they are clipped. And now what I want to do is I want to take these and I want to find my center. So my centers are all marked. Okay, so I want my vinyl panel right side up. I want my side pocket panel right side up as well, and I want to match the centers. And now I want to match the sides. So let's see, let me do one more clip down here, right up to that snip right there, okay, because that's where we're going to fold it or put our pleat in. Okay, so now this won't move. Now I want to grab my side and I want to hold it here because I want to make sure that it doesn't move, and I want to move this over like this and clip it right there where it goes. And then clip going all the way down and around. And remember, there's a pleat here, so it should look like that, okay? So now do the same thing on this side, making sure it's right there. Okay, so now when I lay this down, you're going to get an automatic pleat right there. I don't want a pleat right there. Let me move this up. Okay, so I want to make sure my side panel is good by picking up the clips, and if they have to move, letting them move. Okay. Okay, so now my pleats, I want them to move out, and so let me make sure I'm doing them going the right way. Yeah. Now you see how my purple clip is right where I snipped my fabric right here. That is where the marking was on the pattern. So I want to pull this fabric all the way over so it's right there on the clip of the fabric. You see that? Right there. So now I want to put another clip right there. Now I want to do the same thing over here. Pull it all the way to that clip and then put another clip right there. Okay, so now when I put this down, you know, something tells me I should have put the male one here instead of the female, because I could have put a little mark on there and it would have marked it right where I wanted it. Okay, so let me grab my pen because I want to put my magnetic snap in there first before I put all of this on. But now that I have this on down here, I do not want to move any of this, but I can remove a couple of them from here and fold this down. So now this is exposed and I can put my magnetic snap on this side. Okay, so let me grab this again, get my washer, and I'm going to do this the same exact way I did the other ones. And because I already have Decaville on this side as my stabilizer, I don't need to put another piece on there. I can snap that on, and now I can put the clips back on the sides. So now you can see that I have a magnetic snap right there. If I want to put something in here, I can leave it open and put something large in there, or I could just have it closed like that. So now I'm going to base this at a 1/8 inch seam allowance. And then I'm going to do the same thing to this one over here, and then we'll go on to our next step. It was a little bit more extra, but I'm glad I did it. Okay, so now I want to grab my panels and I want to put them wrong side together because we're going to bind these. Okay, so I want to match up my centers and then clip all the way around on both of these pieces. And remember, you should have right side on this side and right side on this side. So now I'm going to sew 1/8 of an inch all the way around. And now right here I'm going to go ahead and use the hump jumper to help me get over that uneven level there. Okay, so that's all the way around. Okay, that's all the steps up to 239. Okay, so now let's go on to our next section. Okay, so now we're at the front panel assembly. We have our large zipper, 2 gussets, inside panel, our front panel, and then our stabilizer. You can use the Decaville Heavy like I am, or you can use Peltex. So I have my front panel and the 2 zippers, or the zipper with the 2 pulls, I guess I should say. I want to close up the both ends so my zipper pulls do not fall off. So I'm just going to go across. So now my zipper pulls will not fall off. So now I want to burn my ends. Okay, so now I want to open my zipper all the way. Now I want to get to my zipper and I want to take that center point and I want to match it to the top center point up here. Then I want to clip it. And now I want to work my way this way all the way around, clipping it, and this way. Okay, so everything is clipped on there, and now I want to baste all this edge using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, now, before I put my gussets on, I was really looking at that picture and I see that I skipped step number 22. And that is where I was supposed to top stitch this here. Because remember, we pressed it and everything. So I want a crease right here and I want that crease to stay there. So I'm going to top stitch this using a 1/8 inch seam allowance across that crease. And again, this is step number 22. Okay, now I want to get my lighter and just take care of those little threads that are popping out. Okay. Okay, so now my gussets are ready. Now, this gusset, you can see the wider side or the longer side is the top. The shorter side is the bottom. So, I want to lay them both out like this so that I make sure that I'm putting it on right. Now, here on your panel, you should have marked right here, okay? You have this mark. Let me do a little snip so that I can transfer that mark to the other side, because that is where our gusset goes. So now I want to, let's see, I want to put this on there right at that snip all the way across. Now I want to make sure that I'm doing it right. So when this gusset, when this zipper, let me open it. So when this zipper gets opened, you can see the gusset is right there. Okay, so you should have your top stitching on the inside and you should only be able to see your seam. The shorter edge should be on the bottom, the longer one on the top, and it should match up right where that little notch is that we marked. Okay, so now I know that's right, so I'll do the same thing on this side. Okay, so yes. Okay, so I see the inside, I see the inside, yes. So now I want to base this on using a 1/8 inch seam allowance as well. So now I want to grab this panel and put it right sides together. Now I want to make sure that my gusset is completely out of the way. Okay, and so first of all, I'm going to find my center at the top. So now I want to get my center here and my center here, put them right sides together, and clip at the top. I want both of these edges to meet up with each other. So I'm going to first of all clip the bottom and work my way this way, and I might have to snip into the zipper. Okay, I want to make sure still that my gusset is tucked in so it doesn't get in the way. And so now let me clip going this way. Okay, so now you see how it fit. Okay, so now I'm going to come on over to this side, matching up my lining with my exterior, and clip it. So now I want to sew all the way around, making sure to leave this side open because that's how we're going to turn it out. Okay, make sure your zipper is out of the way. Make sure you know where your zipper pull is, and also move this pocket out of the way because you don't want this to get entangled in there. Okay, and this is going to be a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so now we are going to turn this right side out. This is good. Okay, now check and make sure that you're happy with it. So now what you're going to do is you're going to take your Decaville Heavy and you are going to put it in here. Now make sure that you put it in between the two pockets. I'm going to roll it up, put it inside there, and then unroll it once I get it inside of there. So now I've got my Decaville Heavy inside of here in between my two pockets in the center. I'm going to hold on to my lining portion and put my hand right here, and I'm going to push that Decaville all the way to the top, making sure that it's all the way up here. So now when I go through and I top stitch this around here, that Decaville is going to be caught inside of there. And I want you to also see something. You see how with the Decaville it has taken away the wrinkles and everything out of this top portion. So it's made it very, very stable. Okay? So now I'm going to go ahead and top stitch this, and I want to make sure that I pull my sides out of the way so that there's no wrinkles or anything in here either. So I just want to pull it lightly, not really hard. I want my gusset on this side when I'm top stitching it so that the top stitching will be right here. And look at how nice and stable that made that whole top there. I really like the way this is coming out so far. Okay, so now we want to address our bottom portion. And because we made sure that these two were going to line up, they're already lined up together. So that's going to help us a whole lot with our final assembly. So let me get a few more clips here. And now I want to clip this all the way across. Okay, and now I want to baste it using a 1/8 inch seam allowance across the bottom. I'm going to open this up so that I can actually move this whole pocket out of the way. But right here, I want to make sure that this here is going to be caught in that seam, because when we do our final assembly, I want to make sure that that isn't sticking out. And I like that. I'm glad I used these little pockets here for my ink pens. I really like that too. So now we are in for the home stretch. Let me cut down my zipper. Okay, I shouldn't have cut those down until 266, but I think I'll be okay. Now I can see why I shouldn't have cut this zipper. I'm going to have to really keep an eye on that. Let me put a clip on this now. Now I'm like scared that it's going to come, my pulls are going to come off. I want to really explain this so that you don't get your zipper twisted up or mixed up. This here is right side up. This is my top. Here, this is upside down, and this is right side up also. Okay, so now my zipper, I want to make sure this is completely so that you can see it. Let me actually zip up my zipper so that, because it's really easy to get this confused. So I want to make sure that I'm doing this right. Okay, so this is my right side of my zipper. Nothing is twisted, so I am going to put a clip right there on the color side, being on the right side. Okay, now I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to be careful that my zipper doesn't move or it doesn't twist. Okay, so now this is still right side up, center. Now I want to put right sides together with the center over here. So I have a center marking that I clipped. You see it right there? So now I want to grab this center, right sides together, and put it with this center, right sides together. So let me find my clip. There's my clip, or my snip, I guess I should say. Okay, so that is on there correct now. So now I want to turn the whole thing over so that I can see it from this side. And now I want to get the clips and clip it going all the way around this curve. Being careful to really follow the curve. Okay, so now let me turn this way. So when you look at it going like this, you should be able to fold this down, and you should see the right side of your zipper. Okay, so now I want to base this on using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Now I want to move this over because I want to make sure that I follow this curve. So I want to move this over because I don't want anything pulling on the zipper. Okay, make sure that I drop it right where I want it. Okay, so now I'm going to take this, and I have to twist it because it is twisted inside out or right side out, because remember one was upside down. So I want to zip it up just like we did the other thing, the other piece, and look at it to make sure everything is going the right way, because now it's just basted. If there was anything wrong, now is the time you want to take it apart and do it again. Okay, that looks really good. Okay, so now I can turn this over again. So now I want to grab my lining piece, and remember I use a clear pocket, a clear vinyl pocket. Yours, if you're following the pattern, will be a mesh pocket, so it'll be that piece. Okay, first of all I want to find my center. Here's my right side, and here's my right side. So I want to get those centers and match them up and clip it. So now right side to right side. Okay, so match up my center and clip it and go all the way to the side. So now I want to sew across here using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so now let's take a look at that. This is how I can figure it out. Zip it up. That looks good so far. And there's the back. Okay, so now let's see where we're at. Okay, so now in order to top stitch this, I gotta open this up. It'll be much easier. Move this out of the way. And I want to start by clipping on this side, because in order to get a nice even top stitch, you want to be sure that everything's lining up to begin with. Okay, so now let me do the same thing on this side. Okay, so now let me move that through there so that the piece that I am top stitching is on the bottom, and then this is on top. And I am, let me move this out of the way, I've got both the lining and the bottom panel right here, and what I'm doing is I am pulling on it gently and pulling on my zipper at the same time so that that isn't folded, but it's nice and taut. So now, let's see, that is top stitched now. I can take these off. Okay, so now I have to get the stabilizer and put it in between here and then baste this closed. But before I do all that, so I want to clip my threads, I want to again zip up my zipper and make sure everything was put on right, because this could get very confusing very fast. So it's better for you to check it as you go continuously to make sure that your steps are going good. Okay, so there's my top stitching across the front. Okay, and now on the back. And now when I put that stabilizer inside of here, it's going to really give it some real good structure inside of here between this panel and this panel. Okay, so now I am thinking what I want to do, because this is the whole reason. This pocket right here, I'm wanting to put an electronic device in this pocket. That's why I left it large. I'm wondering if I should put a piece of stabilizer and a piece of foam in this back area to give it extra structure, but also to protect my device. You know what? I'm going to take a break, get a cup of coffee, get a sandwich, because I'm getting hungry. Think about it and then see what is best. Okay, so now I want to grab my bag, and now I'm going to attach this first of all to my front right here. So let me open this up again so that I can really smush this down, because we're going to attach it down here. So I really want to make sure that when I put these right sides together that they are going to go on easily. I am going to sew across using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And then over here on this side, you should line up right with your zipper right there. So now let's clip on this side. So now I'm going to sew using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Let's see on this side. Yep, it caught it right there too. So I'm happy with that. So now I can put my pocket back the way it's supposed to be. Now I want to take my lining base and I want to match up that to the top there and clip it. So now this is the way it should look. Your base should be on your bottom, okay, on this slip pocket, okay, and then your exterior base, we are going to put these two together. Okay, so now I'm going to also sew this one using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. That was a lot to sew through. If you are using a domestic machine, what you could do is this slip pocket. You remember how we left it out of this seam over here by folding it down on itself? You could do that to the bottom also, and that would eliminate this here 2 layers out of this seam. So now let's go on to the next step. Yeah. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to top stitch down here so that this base is completely in place, okay? And remember, go slow because this is a lot of layers. So now what I want to do is I've drawn a line at 3/8 of an inch away from the edge. I've put double stick tape on there, and now I want to fold it right on that line. That edge there is finished. Okay, now I want to get this piece here, and you see how it's all the way around. I want to grab it and I want to bring it over to this back portion here so that it will wind up being a complete circle. Okay, now before I sew across here, I want to really make sure that my D-rings are out of the way. Okay, so now I want to sew this seam using a 3/8 inch seam allowance just like the other side. And now go slow when you go over these D-rings, and remember, you should have made sure your D-rings were going up and out of the way. And here you will most definitely need a hump jumper to get over this D-ring. Okay, so now I opened up my zipper right here because it closes like this, right? So I couldn't figure out how I was going to sew this here to that, you know, with it being a loop. But once I opened up my zipper, now this whole area is exposed here. So now when I go to sew across, let me move this over this way and turn it, because now what I want to do is I want to get this piece, which is the inside of my lining, and I want to sew it over here. Okay, but I want to make sure my decaville is inside that crease and inside this crease as well. So now, see how now it's open, that once we put the double stick tape that, now we can put this under the machine and sew it. I knew there had to be a way to do this. I just had to keep trying at it and looking at the pictures, because that's one wonderful thing about Jassy and her her patterns. She really, really pays attention to the details when it comes to the pictures. You know, I think I should sew it going from this side. Yeah, you know what? That way, because I already know that this is right on that line, that stitching line. So now I'm going to do the same thing, put my zipper through, so my zipper is completely out of the way. Move this up, move this down. Okay, so now let me clip the sides. Now I want to sew or baste across here, which is the side of our panels. Okay, so now let's see where we're at. Zip this up again. Through this whole process, I'm zipping, unzipping, zipping, unzipping. Just trying to make sure everything is doing good and doing all right, because it's easier to fix something right as soon as you make the mistake than to continue on and really have mistakes happen. We are now on step 287, and that is going to be completing out our gusset and then putting on our sides. Okay, so I've turned my bag inside out. Okay, when I went to go sew my gussets, my camera stopped. So I wanted to explain it to you what I've just done. I have taken the other side of my gusset and I have basted it to the wrong side of my zipper. Okay, and just basted it using a 1/8 inch seam allowance across here. Unzip your zipper and it'll be a lot easier to do that. So from this side you should have basting here. It should look like this from the outside, and it should look like this from the inside. So again, I took this side of my gusset and I've sewn it or basted it to the wrong side of my zipper. Okay, so now we are ready to sew on our exterior sides. So now I've got my bag inside out. I've got my zipper also open. Okay, I have clipped my bottom to where my panel is. You can see I've clipped it right there, and my exact top is right in the center of my handle right there. Do I have my center points on here? Yes, I do. I have a center point there. I have a center point there. Okay, so now I want to put right sides together, matching my top and my bottom centers. Okay, so there's my center on the bottom, so I want to put right sides together, the right side of my vinyl to the right side of my exterior side panel, and put a clip, and then put a clip also on both sides so that this bottom is really held on there really good. So now let me get the other side and put a clip right there as well. Okay, so now you see how I have very, very little extra gusset still. There is so little extra room in my side panel. Now I can put little slits, tiny slits in my main panel or my top to accommodate for that little discrepancy there. Okay, so now I'm ready to sew my side panel onto my main bag. Okay, I want to start on one of the flat sides. So now, if you think about it, this is an oval, but you're actually sewing a straight line. You're not having to turn anything, although you're having to manipulate the fabric. But this is one of the easiest curves mentally to do, because I want to show you something. You're sewing just a straight line because you're manipulating the fabric as you go. So see how there's no turning or anything of this bag. You're just sewing in a straight line all the way around. Okay, so now with that being said, I want to smash this down so that this seam here where I'm sewing is exposed. Now I want to take out a couple of clips. Smash it down, put it in there using a 1/4 inch seam allowance and go really slow. Okay, so now I'm starting to get to an area where I need to start lifting up on my bag. Okay, and remember, I'm still sewing in a straight line. If this is your first time doing any kind of binding or any kind of a turn like this, you may want to start off with the trio and get that one, because this is kind of the same concept, the same idea. So now we've got our bag standing straight up and down. Now we're continuing on, and again using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So we did it, you guys. Now before I do this other side, I want to first of all make sure this one came out good. I want to really show this to you so that you can see what happened. You see this right here? This is the corner we were talking about. So I know that that should have caught that inside of there at this point because we measured it, remember, with the seam gauge. I want to find out why that didn't catch there. Okay, so now I've got to turn this on the other side and find out what happened to my seam there. You see it? What happened? Here's my side panel. Okay, you can see the vinyl right there. And here is my upper panel, and look at how my upper panel moved over. So my seam is right here, which is 1/4 inch from the distance between here and here. But look at, since my top moved over, it didn't get 1/4 inch in the top area. It's more like maybe an 1/8 to a 1/16 of an inch right there where that intersects. So I want to unpick just a couple of inches, put it in there, use my hemostat, make sure those pieces are over correctly, and re-sew it. So now I've turned it out just enough to get to this area here. I'm going to go ahead and sew it again and really squish all this down. And remember, we're only concentrating on the area in front of our needle, between the needle and the next clip. I'm going to make sure I back stitch. See how it's all enclosed in there now. So I'm happy with that edge, and this side is completely done. Okay, so now I've got to do that same thing on this side. And so now I know that when I get to this intersection from where the top meets the side zipper here, I've got to make sure that all of those pieces are right in there. So now I have my binding here, and I think I'm going to put double stick tape on this first. I only want to remove a small portion at a time, and so now I want to put it right here and stick it down so that my stitching line is not showing at all. So now what I want to do is I just want to tuck it in and put a clip. Okay, so now I want to start on this side because that's where my end is, right there. Let me smush this again, just like we did the other part. Now I want my seam allowance to be just a scant smaller than 1/4 of an inch, because I do not want to mess with my 1/4 of an inch seam allowance on the other side. Okay, so this is just going to be just barely smaller. Okay, so everything looks good there. Okay, so now let's do this side. So everything, I'm happy with it. And so now to turn this bag right side out again. So now my binding is done. Here's our completed bag and the end of this tutorial. This one was a long one, but I'm so happy that you guys made it till the end. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. It really helps me out. Until next time, I'll talk to you later. Bye.